Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, Close Shave TV viewers and followers. It's been a very long time since I've done an interview. It's first time on Zoom, in fact, and I've been waiting for this special esteemed guest of ours for a very long time as well. MashaAllah, he's finally come through. He's been convinced that Close Shave TV, there may be some benefit in it. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Imam Sheikh Ziaullah Khan, or Zia Khan, as he's also known, from Canada, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Welcome to the show, our esteemed guest and Sheikh. Ahlan wa sahlan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a big salam to all the viewers, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Salam. Sheikh, inshallah, I don't want to take too much of your time, so we'll get right into it, inshallah. Of course, you're from Canada, you have roots going back to Pakistan, Afghanistan, I believe.
Yes, my formative years when I was born in Pakistan. My ethnicity actually is extracted from Afghanistan. So we are Muslims, alhamdulillah, whichever land we're born in. And I've lived for over 40 years in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So not from here, not from there, stuck in the middle.
Yeah, like so many of us, right? Second, third,
Yes.
Fourth generation, you know, whether it's a Pakistani, British, Pakistani American, Afghani American, Nigerian, right, British, whatever our home country is, we feel like, you know, we got I'd like to think the best of both worlds, inshallah.
Yeah, I think also it's a stranger on the, for example, we're always trying to prove, or at least not myself, but that's the feeling we get, is we have to always prove that, you know, your loyalties to certain countries, your loyalties to certain people. I think people should just take a backstand and let people live how they are.
Exactly.
Deal with their accents, deal with their different types of food, ingredients. Just let people live. That's my philosophy, right?
MashaAllah, excellent. So that's a perfect segue for us to maybe discuss this about identity. This is something I come across when I was at uni back in early 2000. Muslim identity. Is there a British Muslim identity, a Canadian Muslim identity? Is such a thing important? What would you say today in 2020?
I think every time that people try to pigeonhole somebody to say, okay, tell me you are a certain, like you become like Tiger Woods, where he gave a lame duck kind of a tweet about George Floyd, because he himself cannot identify with the black movement, with him being an African. So the idea here is that people try to pigeonhole you in one thing to say, are you British or are you Muslim? Are you Muslim or are you British? I mean, as though you have to pick either or, where somebody can be, as a free person in a democratic society, you can be anything you want. So why is it that whenever it comes to Muslims, that we have to actually choose and then have to say, oh, to the loyal, oh, we are so loyal, look at us. So we become very big Uncle, you know, Uncle Adil's, Uncle Zia's, Uncle, you know, we become very uncle and auntie-ish, if you understand what I'm saying, in terms of doing more damage to society by not being able to be ourselves, right?
Okay, that's a fair and valid point, to be fair. Speaking about the da'wah now, Sheikh, I know you've been in the da'wah scene for a very long time. You have an Islamic organization, an institution known as the Center for Islamic Development in your hometown of Halifax in Nova Scotia. Tell me very briefly about that. What do you offer to the community? What do you do exactly?
I mean, the Center for Islamic Development has a masjid, has a full-time school from primary to 12, where we have a holistic school where we deal with the child, teach him math, reading, writing, all of that, plus Quran, Islamic studies, and away from bullying, drugs, alcohol, all of these things that actually ruin the child's character. So we have a school, we have We have Arabic programs for Muslims and non-Muslims. Everyone's welcome. We have 5 daily prayers, Jummah prayers. We have iftars in Ramadan. We have prison programs. We do so much as a center, and we're on the phase to expand yet another time, because we have come a long way. And anyone can Google the name and see where we have come from and where we have arrived at this point. But still, there's any organization that actually wants to be viable cannot just be smug at the time that they're in. You have to say, well, where are we going to head in next 10 years? Those are the organizations that will be successful, and hence we want to expand. So that's why a lot of organizations throughout North America, they have taken a serious blow, because they have been not in touch with the youth. They have not been in touch with, there's a buffer zone between the one who's giving khutbah, out of touch with reality, with the people. So at the center, we try to actually bring things that actually affect all of us, right? Mm-hmm. And hence we are inclusive. We have open houses. We have interfaith dialogues, whatever they want. I mean, it's not that, we have to do everything, but we are out there as a platform and nothing to hide. Like, there's always a thing that, what's happening in the masjid? I mean, what is happening when we just open the masjid to come and see what's happening? What is happening? Whatever questions you have, terrorism, hijab, 4 wives, 50 wives, whatever you have, we can answer for you, right? But the thing is that you have to ask. If you don't ask, you won't get educated. Usually racism and all of these Islamophobia, there's a condition at the end. What is that condition? Is the condition of ignorance. And then if you have ignorance, you have fear. If you have fear, you will have ignorance. So educate yourself and you eradicate both of them, right?
Excellent, Jazakallah khair. Moving on to the da'wah scene, Sheikh. Obviously, apart from we have social media, we have social media such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. now, Snapchat. Yeah. Compared to 20, 25 years ago, from your experience now, mashallah, because I understand, mashallah, you're close to your 50s.
Yes.
What's the difference back then in the 90s to today in terms of the da'wah scene?
Well, the da'wah scene is always evolving. If you look at technologies have gone through the roof. I think it has some benefit, but the harm is, I think it's greater in terms of having depth, because people now don't have depth. They have a very shallow understanding of everything. They might watch a video for 2 minutes and then just shut it off because they can't process it. It's always like ping pong, all these messages come in. So from that time to this time, the idea is that I think we were much more stable before the advent of, the onslaught of computers, because you could read books, you could have understanding, you could contemplate, you could actually have a depth of conversation with people. Now you can't. Now anybody you talk to in any kind of session, he's looking at his phone, she's looking at her phone, checking their messages. And if they're with you, they're checking somebody else's message. And if they're with somebody else, they're checking your message. So it's always being at a different spot than you're in. I chalk that up to be, equal to madness. So it's totally changed in that direction. So I think to our detriment, technology has gotten out. Now they can say, well, you have videos and all of those other things. Yes, because you're trying to catch a fish. So you have to go where the fish have landed, yes, no matter how bad it is, in order to drag them back into a state of semblance, right?
So it's a necessity. It's not something you'd say you'd prefer, but it's just a necessity. It's just part and parcel of modern day da'wah, education, streaming, etc., etc. But what you said that was interesting about they lack depth, and there's so much of a shallow understanding now. Could you elaborate on that a bit more, please?
Yeah, because lacking depth is you have very little concentration. You have very little concentration, and you cannot read for hours. You cannot do scholarly work. Even the ones that are coming up, what kind of scholars are we producing for the future, right? I mean, you have for you like in Britain, you have Mufti so and so. I mean, he's made a mockery of himself with earrings and laughing and joking and calling himself a Mufti. And you have so many of these kinds that really we can have a good laugh at it, but it's really painful at the end because you can't have good scholarship and even bring up students of depth with this kind of scat. But because what it does, the internet does, is it takes all of your attention and scatters it. So it gives you the idea that it's having your attention, but literally it's scattering it. So yeah, definitely we are worse off.
So it's like entertainment now, right? It's about, get the attention
Everything.
in the first 2 minutes and be funny. And maybe alongside that, there's a discussion of, and I'm definitely not amongst these people, but in terms of the scholars and the du'at, how they may feel sometimes they might need to compromise on, the haybatul ulama, and the hayba,
Yeah.
the aura, if you like, the aura, if that's the correct translation, that the ulama and the Rabbaniyin, the scholars and the spiritual teachers have. And at the same time, making themselves more appealing and entertaining. And there's a fine line between that, sacrificing that for the sake of image, and also, being a follower of the faith and the true meaning and spirit of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's messenger, right? What I want to also ask you about is your channel. Recently, you've opened a channel, right? I believe it was the name of the channel is Imam Zia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Imam Zia. Okay.
So the reason why we go ahead, you were going to
Yeah. So you have your own YouTube channel now called Imam Zia. And you've got a number of videos on there. I think that the video production and editing is very good. A lot of your messages are very good. They revolve around, obviously, the meaning of Islam, debunking certain myths that you kind of used to do a lot. Because I know you've come here in the UK. I've seen you here in the UK a while ago. We can get into that. You've traveled a lot all around the world giving da'wah. What's the main content on this channel of yours? And what is the reason that you choose particular content, such as India, Modi India, for example? What's happened to the Uyghur Muslims as well in China with the re-education camps?
So the reason why I made this channel, Imam Zia channel, I just called it Imam Zia because that's what I'm known as. The reason I made that is because we are voiceless as Muslims. We need to have a voice, and I'm still developing it, because somebody might come to the channel and say, oh, he has such a wide range of videos dealing with international human rights crisis, to hadith, to Quran, misconception. But I'm still developing each part of that channel because we don't have a voice. And I've always said that Muslims should always have a voice because we have something to offer. Yes. So we have something to offer, and in terms of Black Lives Matter, although I don't like the name Black Lives Matter, I find it's a defeated kind of name. I agree with their platform, but it's a defeated, we just matter. And then everyone said, all lives matter. I mean, you have to put things into perspective. You gotta have to, I'm sure that they didn't know how big Black Lives Matter was going to be, but I don't like that defeated kind of name, like it matters. Actually, the Black people have been facing humiliation and torture for over 400 years. And I think it shouldn't be Black Lives Matter. It should be Black Lives Important, Black Lives Crucial. It should be something that's empowering. I don't like that name. I'm a person who thinks in words, but I do agree with their platform. So yes, I'm totally aware of the fact that we Muslims are Black, we're brown, we're white, we're all. So we are not there to be racist, but at the same time, we are supposed to be there, that the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, said that if you see a wrongdoing, change it with your hand. And if you can't change it with your hand, change it with your speech. And if you can't, then change it with your heart. And that's the lowest of faith. So I believe that, at least I have the ability to articulate. So we have to be able to articulate. So many times the Black movement, for example, they have sided with the Palestinian cause. And the Palestinians also, Mandela also stated that he was very happy to see that the Palestinians also at that time were siding with Mandela, right? So this is not something that happened last year. So whenever the black movements decide with us, or whichever movement there's out there for justice that side with us, we as Muslims also, because we have, you know, small parts of every culture, every ethnicity in our midst. Yes. So why don't we actually also speak up? It's our right to. So that's why we have that. That's why I said we need to have a channel to actually speak about these things, speak about the killing of innocent Muslims in India, because we say, why just Muslims? Okay, the next are the Catholics, the next are the Maoists, right? They're also being expunged. Then why do you talk about the Muslims in Kashmir? Okay, the next. So whenever you keep quiet, you think that Hitler would stop at the Jews and the Gypsies? No, he would have continued on. Yes. So whoever else he would have found. So mad people also do mad things, but good people also need to actually speak up. And hence, that's why we made the channel. I mean, you know, in order to put a platform that we have a voice and that we also need to uncover these injustices, right? We all have a statement to make.
Whatever the oppression may be, obviously, whether it's against Muslims or non-Muslims, as Muslims, we need to stand up and speak out against that.
Yeah, 100%.
No matter who the perpetrator may be, no matter who the oppressed may be and the downtrodden. So yeah, you spoke about the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, in terms of the semantics of the term itself, you don't agree with. You think maybe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a bit reductionist or defeatist, right? Of course, Black Lives Matter, but they matter more than simply mattering. Black lives are absolutely crucial and important, as you said. The movement itself, as Muslims, how should we respond? I mean, I've done videos on this. I've done a poem as well, as you know, which you really liked a lot, I remember. But yeah, subhanAllah. How do we respond to this then as a Muslim community? How do we show our support for Black Lives Matter, for example?
We join them. We join them. We march with them. You see, whenever they march, you have to have, you know, and people know that, and they came out in the briefings that whenever these people march, they're not the ones looting and doing all of these things. It's somebody instigates the problem. You see, they found out in America where KKK, part of KKK had come in and started throwing rocks and things in the midst of everyone.
Like infiltrated.
And panic, right?
They infiltrated it basically. I even saw images, some of them painted their faces black, man. Like it was ridiculous, right? And the looting started, and they were literally, they were just infiltrating and giving the bad name, just perpetuating that stereotype black people are doing all over again, right? Which is obviously absolute rubbish. So
and the idea here is looting. I mean, what makes me upset more is that we're worried about a shop that's being looted that has international chains, but we're not worried about the people who have been chained for over 400 years and have been persecuted for walking into a grocery store, for just walking home, be choked to death, be tasered, for just sitting in a car, sleeping, you know, at a Wendy's restaurant. I mean, the injustice is so stark that it makes you want to get sick. And then all we have to hear, oh, look at the looting. The looting is so terrible. It's so terrible. Well, why are you not been saying it's come to this? Because we don't condone any kind of looting, although looting is, you know, taken from from India, where British, you know, where you guys have gone in.
The European colonialists, they were the real looters, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, of course, exactly. But then at the same time, we stand by it because right is right and wrong is wrong. And our religion teaches us to stand for justice and the truth, even if it's against your own selves, right?
Right.
But okay, in terms of the channel, there's a video that I saw very powerful about the Uyghur Muslims. And many people feel it's something that we're not speaking enough about as a Muslim community, the re-education communist camps that they have, you know, they call them re-education camps, you know, subhanAllah, but the horrors and the torture we've heard about, families being ripped apart and forced marriages and, you know, forced abortions as well, right? Trying to literally kill off the Muslim population. How do we respond to that? I mean, is there some exaggeration, do you think, to that? Where do we go forward? How do we go forward? Do we boycott China?
It's in the reverse, because I met with the head of the Uyghur movement. He came down to Dalhousie where we spoke on the same panel, Abdul Qayyum. And, you know, he had all the facts with him, meaning to say that when they say that 1 million people in concentration camp, it's not 1 million. It's far over 3 millions. All their intellectuals are in these camps. People are going organ harvesting. Muslim women are not allowed to even have a little bit of a longer dress. We have pictures that I've put into this video that they cut the dress of the female right on the road, that it's too long. They make Muslims drink alcohol. Somebody could say, oh yeah, drinking, oh, that'd be great. I'll be smashed out and stuff. No, but you don't understand. You drink because you want to. But if somebody doesn't want to, that's actually punishment. Mm-hmm. So they're made to drink, you know, in front of everyone and drink. And they have the most absurd thing, which we have proof for, is that they have from mainland China, from the communist government, they install people in people's houses. So this person lives with them for 6 months. You have to feed them, and he takes notes. He has 100 points. So if you pray, you lose a point. If you have religious books, you lose points. And he sits with them, and then they take national videos where the woman, if she covers herself, she can't, with him being there. Otherwise, you can be thrown into concentration camps for being extremist. And I lay the blame not only just on the Chinese government, but also the Western governments, because, you know, France and in some part Britain also, where they have actually initiated this kind of, okay, get after the Muslims, right? So when dictatorial regimes will see this as, look, these so-called democracies are doing it and telling us to have democratic rights and human rights, we might as well do something even worse. Yeah. We'll organ harvest and we'll do all of these other things. So I made a 20-minute video and just tried to really compact the situation, because they call it the Xinjiang province, but actually Xinjiang province, sorry, it's actually East Turkestan, right? Mm-hmm. They don't consider themselves as a province. They call it semi-autonomous and all this. They're actually, it's the slap on the Muslims' face that the Muslims are actually not seeing what's taking place, and people of human rights are not seeing what's taking place in China, because they're doing this, and they take a girl at age 14 from, say, a family that has 3-4 kids, and they take a girl from about age 14 and they send her away to live with a Chinese family for 5 years, and to come back as a spy in this East Turkestan province.
It's actually incredible and shocking. So it's so surreal, yeah, and incredible, that it's something that you can't really imagine, right? I mean, it's like, is this even true? Like, how could you go to that extent? I mean, I know there's like the nation itself, China, has millions and millions of cameras and CCTV. It's ridiculous. But to think that the oppression is going on, you know, you mentioned about, you kind of blame Western governments as well, because you kind of gave them the green light. Maybe you're alluding to, and I think maybe even after 9/11, it gave a lot of these governments and these autocratic and tyrannical regimes the green light to, in the name of fighting terrorism, right? On the pretext of, you know, fighting terrorism, let's just take away people's human rights and lock them up, etc., etc. But I personally put a lot of the blame on the Muslim countries. I don't even blame Western countries, any other regime. It's the Muslim countries that need to stand up for their own Muslim brothers and sisters that we're too busy banging on about all the time, right?
No, because when you say that I blame the Muslim countries, I mean, there are very few rulers in the Muslim countries that have any kind of dignity to stand up for themselves. Most of them are propped up puppets from these so-called governments that we are dealing with. So Gaddafi for 42 years, you know, he's, you know, propped up puppet. Saddam Hussein, bin Ali, all of these people, Hosni Mubarak, you name them, none of them, how did they come to power, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did they, democratically, how did they come to power? You
And
see, Muhammad Morsi, who was not politically, he was actually politically callow. He was not a political person,
no,
but he came democratically inside.
of
And
course.
the day he came in inside, they made groups in order to subvert his democratic rule,
And his
right?
victory. And his
And then
victory.
ended up murdering him in jail, and then just discarding him, and the aid is still flowing into Egypt with this dictator Sisi being the head of it.
Well, it's
So
the hypocrisy of democracy, right? They happily, a lot of the democratic Western governments, European governments, America, USA, they're happy to actually deal with these dictators. And a lot of the times they do their dirty work for them, right? One thing I want to discuss is obviously on your channel, you've got a lot of different content, Islamic content, which is your main stuff, but some of the political stuff. Now, there's been different eras in the Muslim world and here in the West, for example, of scholars and da'is who kind of try to focus on politics or not political or apolitical. What's the balance? Are Muslims supposed to be political? There's discussion amongst ulama, for example. Some of them, you're not supposed to protest. It's not allowed. I mean, where do you get this balance exactly of being politically minded or just being, okay, I want to do my prayers and my zakat and my fasting. Leave me alone. I don't want to do anything else.
That's not Islam, because that's exactly what some of the Western governments want. We want this ideal Muslim to, don't pray 5 times a day, pray 1 or 2 times, have an occasional beer, and you're moderate. That's why they kept on putting these things, moderate, extreme, not moderate. And so all of these appellages that they try to put on us, I think it's really something that's really hypocritical and false, right? Aristotle, so for even non-Muslims hearing this program, Aristotle said the only person that's not political is an animal or somebody who's extremely selfish, right? That's the only two that can be non-political or apolitical. Because if you are not political, and Islam has, it has politics, right? I mean, we use politics because it's not a number of ticks that are eating you. I mean, that's a totally different system. Democracy, is it a direct democracy? Is it an indirect democracy? I mean, this is a topic on its own. But what Islam has, it has shura, and it has wahi, has revelation. So it can augment the processes of bringing in opinions, right? And at the same time, having a political system. Because one of the things that the West have always been fighting against is political Islam. It's their foreign policy mandate to fight against political Islam. So whatever that may be in their minds, I mean, however shallow it is, but Islam gave the impetus to European Renaissance. I mean, you wouldn't be talking to me if there wouldn't be Ibn Rushd, who they call Avarius, from 767 years rule of Muslims in Spain. So the idea here is that don't tell us not to be political, while whatever you do is rife with politics, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we can talk a lot about this. I mean, we can talk about obviously the fear of Islam, Islamophobia. I mean, it's all kind of pinned around that as well. Is it to do with like the hangover by the end of the Ottoman Empire? Getting close to Europe and Vienna, and not wanting if you like, a Muslim successful nation politically and militarily. I mean, that's like a no-go area, right? Is it to do with that? Is it
just fear of Islam?
They don't want competition? What is it?
No, it's just fear. Because once you fear people, that's how you're going to act. So you bring in people. You see, people are affected with media, including the highest politicians. So they bring fear onto the table. I mean, if you find a lunatic like this south of the border with an orange head ruling a nuclear country, I mean, he's showing you that anything that comes on television, he's going to lash out at. So these people who actually, we think that they come in as professionals. No, they have their own insecurities. And that's why I think I just tell them, get with the program. You know, world changes. Nigerian missionaries go to Sri Lanka and establish there. Their children actually grow as Sri Lankans. You can't tell them they're not Sri Lankans. People move in different parts of the world. You know, white people go to India and start speaking Urdu and Hindi. You understand? Because they're evangelicals that are wanting to do this, and they ended up staying there, liking the curry and don't like their bland food and stuff, and they ended up staying there. You understand? Yeah. So the idea here is that people move, but as soon as Muslims move, oh my goodness, it's a problem. And then it's looked on as like, what a, and we say, oh, we don't want to talk about Hitler, but Hitler did the same thing. He called the Jews the infestation. He showed rats going down the wall. He was doing all of these propagandas. And that's exactly what the Western governments are doing with the Muslims. Yes, some of them who have, you know, some kind of moral sense, they do allow a quota. Like we have a good prime minister in Canada.
Trudeau.
I mean, Trudeau, he's fantastic. He's good with everyone. I mean, he's not, no one is impeccable, but at the same time, we have a prime minister who's inclusive, who's not hypocritical on the international stage. So, you know, there are good leaders, but at the same time, the subjects have to be good in order for the leaders to be good, right? Inshallah. But we can't say that where I differ with you in this sense is that when you say Muslim leaders, they're not Muslim leaders. They were propped up, sick people to be placed upon us, and then we have to say, well, these are our leaders, right?
Yeah, I understand. Jazakallah khair. Imam Zia, we can go on and speak about so much. The time is short. I want to definitely do a part 2 to this, inshallah ta'ala. A lot of the viewers are going to be more interested in you. I'm going to put a reference to your channel, Imam Zia. Please subscribe to Imam Zia's channel. Inshallah, he has very good content. Allah give you more blessings and tawfiq to you and your family. Inshallah, we will meet again soon. Barakallah feek, and I thank you again for being a guest, Sheikh, on our channel. And make dua for us, of course. And till we meet again, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Zia, bye.